listeners to a journey into the heart of one of America's most haunted locations. Tonight, we travel to the Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, a place of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable horror. Beneath its moss-draped oaks and charming verandas lies a history steeped in tragedy. It is said that this estate is not haunted by one or two ghosts, but by at least 12 vengeful spirits, each with a story of sorrow and injustice, their energies forever woven into the fabric of the house and its grounds. The story begins in 1796 with General David Bradford, also known as Whiskey Dave, who built the original home, then called Laurel Grove. He was a fugitive, fleeing the Whiskey Rebellion, and chose this remote spot to build his new life. However, legend insists that the land he chose was sacred, an ancient and desecrated Native American burial ground. From its very foundation, the plantation was built upon a place of unrest, perhaps initiating a curse that would plague all who came to live and die within its walls for centuries to come. Among the 12 spirits, the first is believed to be that of a young Native American woman. The details of her story are lost to time, but the legend says she was brutally murdered by early settlers. Her restless soul is said to wander the forests surrounding the plantation. A fleeting white shadow seen darting between the ancient trees. Visitors at night sometimes report hearing the faint, mournful cries of a woman carried on the wind, a sorrowful sound that serves as a constant reminder of the land's first tragedy. After General Bradford's death, his daughter Sarah and her husband Clark Woodruff inherited the estate, renaming it the Myrtles. Their prosperity was built on the backs of hundreds of enslaved people whose lives were filled with unimaginable hardship and cruelty. It is believed that the souls of many of these unfortunate individuals remain trapped on the property. Their collective pain and anguish created a deep well of negative energy that has soaked into the very soil, becoming the spiritual foundation for the horrors that were to follow. Guests and staff have frequently reported seeing apparitions of enslaved people, still performing their earthly duties in the afterlife. Spectral figures in tattered clothing are seen working in the fields at dusk, only to vanish when approached. Others have heard the ghostly rattle of chains or the sharp, cutting sound of a whip cracking in the empty air. These spirits seem caught in a loop, forever reliving the torment of their mortal lives, unable to find peace or freedom even in death. One specific spirit from this era is that of a large woman, often seen wearing an apron, walking silently along the home's wraparound porch. She appears solid, often mistaken for a historical reenactor by unsuspecting tourists. One visitor reported seeing this woman walk right through a closed door. She never interacts or shows aggression. She simply continues her endless, silent patrol, a quiet testament to a life of servitude that death itself could not end. her presence a permanent fixture of the plantation's haunted landscape. Of all the tales from the Myrtles, none is more famous or chilling than the story of Chloe. She was an enslaved woman owned by Judge Clark Woodruff, who allegedly forced her into being his mistress. When the judge grew tired of her and turned his attentions elsewhere, Chloe became consumed with fear that she would be sent from the relative comfort of the main house to the brutal labor of the fields. This fear drove her to begin eavesdropping on the family's private conversations, desperate to learn her fate. One day, Chloe was caught in the act. As a cruel punishment and a warning to others, Judge Woodruff ordered that one of her ears be cut off. From that day forward, she wore a green turban to hide the gruesome scar and the deep shame she felt. Ostracized and in constant pain, Chloe devised a desperate plan to regain her position in the household. She intended to make the Woodruff children mildly ill, and then use her knowledge of local herbs to miraculously cure them, thus making herself indispensable to the family once more. On the occasion of one of the daughters' birthdays, Chloe baked a cake. Into the batter, she mixed a small, controlled amount of leaves from the oleander plant, which grew abundantly on the property. Oleander is highly toxic, but Chloe believed she was using just enough to cause a sickness, not a fatality. Her goal was to play the hero, to nurse the family back to health and secure her safety. It was a gamble born of pure desperation, a plan that would go horribly and tragically wrong. The plan backfired with catastrophic consequences. The amount of poison in the cake was far more potent than Chloe had anticipated. Judge Woodruff's wife, Sarah, and 2 of their 3 children ate the poisoned dessert. They fell violently ill, and despite any efforts to save them, they died in agony. The home that was meant to be filled with celebration was instead plunged into unimaginable grief and horror, all because of one desperate act that spiraled out of control. When the other enslaved people discovered what Chloe had done, terror swept through their community. They feared the judge, mad with grief, would inflict a terrible and indiscriminate revenge upon all of them for Chloe's actions. To protect themselves, they decided to enact their own form of brutal justice. In the dead of night, a group dragged Chloe from her bed, hanged her from a large oak tree, and then threw her lifeless body into the nearby Mississippi River, hoping to erase all evidence of the crime. Chloe's tragic end did not bring her peace. Her spirit is said to remain at the Myrtles, forever bound to the scene of her crime and her death. She is the plantation's most active and frequently seen apparition. A famous photograph taken in 1992 appears to show a translucent, human-like figure standing between 2 of the plantation's buildings. This shadowy form is widely believed to be the ghost of Chloe, the woman in the green turban, still lingering in the place that defined her suffering. Many believe Chloe's spirit wanders the halls at night, filled with eternal remorse. Guests staying in the main house have reported being awakened by the unsettling feeling of being watched, only to see the faint outline of a woman in a turban standing at the foot of their bed. The sorrowful, muffled weeping of a woman is also a common occurrence, a sound that seems to emanate from the very walls of the old house, the eternal cry of a soul that can find no forgiveness. The poisoned cake tragedy did not only create the ghost of Chloe, it also ensnared the souls of her victims. According to lore, the spirits of Sarah Woodruff and her 2 children became trapped within a large, ornate mirror that still hangs in the home's grand foyer today. This object has since become one of the most paranormally active items in the entire plantation. A beautiful prison for 3 tormented souls who should have passed on. It was a common custom of the era to cover all mirrors in a house after a death, to prevent the spirits of the recently deceased from becoming trapped inside. However, in the grief-stricken chaos that followed the poisoning, this one mirror was overlooked. As a result, it is believed that the souls of Sarah and her 2 young children were drawn into the glass, forever caught between the world of the living and the world of the dead, able to look out but never leave. Over the years, countless visitors have reported disturbing experiences with the mirror. Many claim to see more than just their own reflection staring back at them. They describe seeing shadowy figures moving behind them, or the faint, distorted faces of a woman and 2 children appearing on the glass surface, their expressions etched with eternal sadness. The mirror seems to hold a memory of the tragedy, replaying fragments of the horror for those who dare to look too deeply into its depths. The most unsettling evidence connected to the haunted mirror is the frequent appearance of children's handprints on the glass. These small prints materialize even moments after the mirror has been thoroughly cleaned. Strangely, they seem to be impressed upon the glass from the inside. Along with the handprints, long smudge marks sometimes appear, as if someone were desperately trying to wipe their way out from within the mirror, a chilling sign of their unending imprisonment. The presence of the Woodruff family is not confined solely to the mirror. The playful, yet eerie, laughter of children is often heard echoing on the veranda and through the halls. Even when no children are present, the ghosts of the 2 children are said to run through the rooms, sometimes moving small objects or playing pranks on overnight guests. One visitor reported being violently pulled from her bed by an unseen force while staying in the room that was once the children's nursery. The spirit of Sarah Woodruff is seen less frequently, but her presence is marked by a profound and heavy sadness. She appears as a full-bodied apparition of a woman in a long dress, wandering the corridors as if endlessly searching for the children she lost. The sound of her soft, heartbroken weeping is sometimes heard late at night, a lament that cuts through the silence and serves as a painful reminder of a family destroyed by a single, tragic act of desperation. Years passed, and the plantation again changed hands. The story of the Woodruffs and Chloe faded into local legend. But the cycle of death was far from over. In the years following the Civil War, another violent tragedy occurred, adding another restless spirit to the plantation's haunted roster. This was the soul of William Drew Winter, an attorney who lived, and more importantly, died at the Myrtles between 1865 and 1871. On a fateful evening in 1871, William Winter was standing on the side porch when he was confronted by a stranger who emerged from the darkness. Without warning, the stranger fired a single shot, striking Winter in the chest. Mortally wounded, the dying attorney summoned his last ounce of strength and staggered back into the house. His only thought was to reach his wife, who was on the second floor. He began the agonizing climb up the grand central staircase. His strength failed him before he could reach the top. William Winter collapsed and died on the 17th step of the staircase. His violent and painful death left a permanent psychic scar on that very spot. To this day, one of the most common paranormal events reported at the Myrtles is the sound of his final, agonizing journey. Guests and staff alike report hearing the heavy, labored footsteps of a man ascending the stairs, only to stop suddenly at the 17th step. The phantom footsteps are always followed by a dull, sickening thud, as if a body has just collapsed onto the wooden stairs. This sequence of sounds replays night after night, a grim reenactment of Winter's last moments on Earth. Paranormal investigators have captured these unexplained footsteps on audio recordings, known as electronic voice phenomena, providing some of the most compelling evidence of the haunting. His soul seems trapped in a loop, forced to relive his own death for eternity. The history of Louisiana is deeply intertwined with the American Civil War, and the Myrtles was not immune to its influence. While no major battles were fought on the property itself, the house was used as a temporary headquarters and barracks for both Union and Confederate soldiers at different times. The chaos of war brought more death to the plantation, not always from battle, but often from disease and untreated wounds suffered by the soldiers quartered there. It is believed that at least 3 Confederate soldiers died inside the main house and were buried in unmarked graves somewhere on the sprawling property. The spirits of these soldiers are now said to linger, forever guarding their final post. Eyewitnesses have reported seeing full-bodied apparitions of men in Civil War-era uniforms patrolling the grounds, particularly on misty nights. They march in silence before fading away into the darkness, a spectral platoon still fighting a war that ended long ago. The paranormal activity linked to these soldiers is not limited to the outdoors. Inside the house, people have heard the unmistakable sound of military boots marching across the wooden floors of empty rooms, the faint clanking of metal like rifles being stacked, and the disembodied voice of an officer giving a quiet command have also been reported. The smell of gunpowder sometimes mysteriously permeates the air, a ghostly scent left behind by a phantom army that still occupies the plantation. Beyond these well-documented stories, the Myrtles is home to several other lingering spirits whose tales have become part of its haunted tapestry. In the main parlor sits a grand piano that is often heard playing by itself. It's rarely a full song, but rather a single, haunting chord that repeats over and over. This is believed to be the spirit of one of the previous owner's daughters, a young music lover who died of illness, her soul forever attached to the instrument she loved. Another story tells of a young girl who fell gravely ill in the 1860s. Her desperate family hired a voodoo priestess to perform a healing ritual. But the girl died before the rite could be completed because the ritual was interrupted. It said the girl's spirit was trapped in her former bedroom. Guests staying in that room report objects moving on their own, the sensation of being touched while sleeping, and the fleeting image of a young girl hiding behind the curtains. Near the old outdoor kitchen, there is a brick-lined well with a dark history. Legend says it was the site of a brutal confrontation between 3 plantation overseers. All 3 men were killed, and their bodies were unceremoniously thrown down the well. The area is now said to be charged with a hostile, aggressive energy. Visitors who venture too close, especially at night, report feeling an intense sense of being watched. And some have even claimed to be pushed or shoved by an unseen, malevolent force. Adding to this ghostly congregation are the many nameless spirits. These are the souls of enslaved children who perished from disease and neglect, men killed in violent brawls, and women who tragically died during childbirth. Each life cut short, each painful death left an indelible mark on the property. Together, these known and unknown souls make up the 12 vengeful spirits of the Myrtles, and perhaps many more, creating a community of the dead who cannot find peace. We have walked through the shadowed halls of the Myrtles Plantation, listening to the tragic tales of the souls who linger there, from the remorse of Chloe to the eternal imprisonment of the Woodruff family, from the final steps of William Winter to the endless patrol of spectral soldiers. Each spirit tells a piece of a larger story, a story of human suffering, injustice, and violence that has stained this place forever. Are these hauntings merely the product of overactive imaginations, fueled by more than 2 centuries of folklore and legend? Or has the sheer weight of so much tragedy truly torn a hole in the veil that separates our world from the next? The countless first-hand accounts from credible witnesses suggest that something profound and inexplicable is indeed happening at the Myrtles, where the past is not only remembered, but actively relived every single day. The Myrtles Plantation continues to welcome guests who are brave enough to spend the night. Many come seeking a thrill, but they often leave with a personal story they cannot explain, a strange reflection, a disembodied voice, or an unshakable feeling of being watched. So if you ever visit, remember that you are a guest, not just in a historic inn, but in the home of the dead. And be careful, lest one of its dozen vengeful spirits decides to follow you home.